right, for our fourth speech, it's going to be John. Welcome, John. And this is the title of your speech is the
War on Cash.
War on Cash.
So who knows who thinks they know what that means? Anybody? What does it mean?
No longer using like cash green as opposed to like digital cards or
Right.
swipes
Kind of.
or
Anyone else?
War on cash.
Yes.
I think it sounds like an inner struggle between people that are trying to become wealthy and achieve it. So you're causing basically a war of conflict within yourself because you're constantly battling to get more and you'll never win because it's
Not really, but anyway, basically the war on cash. It's all these things, but what it really is, it's the devaluation of money. In a previous speech, I talked about how when Ken and Tim and I were kids, we would get 5% interest on the bank. But since around the turn of the century, we've been getting 0%. So the first thing is if you leave your money in the bank, after inflation, the value of your money is going down. Now the US and Europe were developed countries. A lot of the same things are happening in Europe where they've gone to zero interest rates. And in Europe, it's even more extreme. A lot of the bonds that the governments sell have actually gone negative. So 1/3 of all the bonds sold in Europe and Japan are actually negative. So people are buying bonds, large investment companies, knowing that they're going to lose money. Now also what's happened in Europe is a lot of the banks are being charged negative rates to leave their money to central banks. Now it hasn't happened yet in the US, but a lot of people think because the banks are being charged negative rates on their money that they may pass it on to consumers in Europe and in Japan. Now, a lot of things that people have been doing in Japan, people are actually buying safes to store money. Because why would you keep your money in a bank if it's a possibility the bank can charge maybe negative 0.5%? Even would you keep your money in the bank? But aside from all this, there's an actual, this is more conspiracy type of thing that some people talk about, but there are instances where just recently Lawrence Summers, he was the Treasury Secretary maybe 15 years ago, and he said we should outlaw the $100 bill because a lot of drug people use it in transactions, and they also talked about this in Europe. So think about it, if they outlawed big bills, and eventually, you say with Apple paying a lot of things like this, people are going digital. Now, if banks ever did go to a negative rate, right now you can take your money out like in Japan and put it in your safe, right? You can buy a lot of 1,000 yen bills or whatever. But what if somewhere down the road we went to a digital? You know, we just wiped out cash and everything was digital. Then all the banks can say, we're going to have negative rates. Where would you put your money? You would be losing money. So this is, some of it makes sense as believable and some of it doesn't. But the main thing is the value of money in a lot of different ways is being lessened every year. But really the main thing for our concern is inflation. So the government says we have 1 or 2% inflation every year. It's not that much. But if you're getting zero interest in the bank, your money is losing 2% value per year. But what about other things? What about rent? Who here rents an apartment? A few people. Well, I've been reading in the paper, rents have been going up, what, 10 or 20% a year? What about medical expenses or insurance? 10% a year. What about education, people that just finished school? When we were kids, some of us, maybe we paid $10,000 for 4 years, now it's maybe a few $100,000. So if you think about this, your money is really losing value. And I'm going to show you a little bit an experiment of maybe how you cannot lose money. So, does everyone know what this is? This is a 10-ounce bar of pure silver. See?
You sure it's not chocolate?
It's heavy.
Chocolate.
It's real money. So it's a 10-ounce bar. It's worth, silver is worth about $17 an ounce. So it's worth $170. So just keep that in mind. This is a 10-ounce bar of silver, and let's say cash, you need $170 to be the same amount. Let's assume this is $170, right? and you put your cash in the bank for 5 years. And the silver, you just have the 10 ounces, you just keep it in your drawer or keep it safe for 5 years, right? Now, 5 years from now, how much are your medical expenses going to go up in value? Or your taxes even? My cell phone bill, I've had the same plan, but the taxes go up every year. Or education, rent, stuff like this in 5 years. So in 5 years, if you just take a basket of these expenses, how much is my I'm not getting anything in the bank, so in 5 years, how much is $170 going to buy healthcare and education and all these things? Maybe 50% less, right? It's possible, or 30% less, because like I said, a lot of this stuff is going up 10% every year. But what can you do? You're getting zero interest in the bank. Now, if we look at this, some people think gold and silver too, they hold their value. If you had an ounce of silver 100 years ago, I think it was worth maybe $30 an ounce. A good way, some people look at it is that an ounce of gold. For this argument, it's gold, but some people look at an ounce of gold has always bought a well-made suit. So if 100 years ago an ounce of gold was $30, you could buy a good suit. Just now, an ounce of gold is worth $1,000 or $1,200. You can get a really good suit. But back to this, the money in 5 years, like we said, all these services, rent, medical, what have you, that $170. Maybe in 5 years, you're only going to be able to really buy $130 worth or whatever, because those expenses are going to be maybe $250. But this 10-ounce bar, if it keeps up with inflation and a lot of expenses, the bar, it's the same 10 ounces, but it may go up in value to pay for all these expenses, just like it has in the past. If you look at the year 2000, the Dow Industrials were at 10,000, kind of when a lot of these problems started happening, and now it's at 15,000. So unless you got lucky and picked Apple or something like my sister, if you had your money in the stocks, you made 50%. But an ounce of gold was $300, now it's $1,200. An ounce of silver was $5, and now it's $15. So this is just an example, and like I've said in my other speeches, I'm not telling you what to do with your money, but the thing to keep in mind, seriously, is that these are really unprecedented times, where we've had zero interest rates for 8 or 10 years. In Japan, the government started buying stocks on the Japanese stock exchange, if you can imagine that. I mean, at what point does it become funny money? But it's not too funny, is it? Because it's our money. So these are just some things to think about. This was a little experiment that I showed you, but there could be other ways to conserve your money. But the main thing is you want to try and think of ways to preserve your wealth, and just remember that we are in uncharted territory. Thank you.